Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a bit of a different approach.
Oh,
Yeah, we're ditching the usual, the academic journals and news articles.
interesting.
Yeah, and instead we're diving into a Reddit thread.
Okay, a Reddit thread.
But it's not just any thread.
What is it?
We're going deep into the responses to a question. What's a dead giveaway that you grew up poor?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating about this is we're getting insights directly from people
Yeah.
who've lived these experiences.
Right.
It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it can be incredibly revealing, I think.
Absolutely.
And for anyone listening, there's a good chance you'll find some of these anecdotes
Yeah.
surprisingly relatable, even if you didn't grow up in poverty yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So consider this your invitation to maybe reflect on your own upbringing and maybe even uncover some ingrained habits or perspectives
Yeah.
that you never realized were shaped by your background.
I love that. Yeah. Because that's what these discussions are all about, right?
Totally.
They challenge us to kind of think critically about how our past experiences,
Yeah,
both big and small, continue to influence us in ways we might not even be aware of.
that's so true. Okay, so let's jump into this thread. One thing that immediately stood out to me
Okay.
was just how many responses revolved around food.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, when basic needs like food are scarce.
Yeah,
It has a profound impact on our psychology and behavior, even years down the line.
totally. For example, there are a ton of comments about using a fork to eat cereal just to make the milk last longer.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, who could forget the iconic Wish sandwich?
The classic.
2 slices of bread with a whole lot of hoping for something a little more substantial in the middle.
Yeah, these anecdotes, they really highlight that scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about the lack of resources in the moment, but that fear of those resources disappearing again.
Totally. And it's fascinating how that fear can manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you see incredible resourcefulness and ingenuity, right?
Oh, yeah.
People talking about combining those little slivers of soap
Uh,
to make them last longer,
oh, I've done that.
right? Reusing containers for everything imaginable,
Oh, yeah.
saving condiment packets like they're precious gems.
Totally. It's like this creative problem solving born out of necessity.
Right.
And it's interesting to note that a lot of these practices, while rooted in, financial constraints, are actually very much in line with current sustainability movements.
That's true.
It's a reminder that being mindful of our resources isn't just about saving money. It can also have a positive impact on the environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then you also see examples of frugality that are maybe bordering on,
Oh.
well, a little excessive,
Okay.
like hoarding food even when it's past its expiration date or extreme couponing.
Right.
That becomes almost like an obsession.
Right. So it makes you wonder, when does frugality cross the line from a practical strategy to a behavior that might be detrimental to our well-being?
That's a great question.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
It requires introspection to recognize
Yeah.
when certain habits are no longer serving us.
Reading these comments about food also made me think about how our culture often glorifies like clean plates
Right.
and minimizing food waste, but maybe doesn't always acknowledge those anxieties that can drive those behaviors
Yeah,
for people who've experienced food insecurity.
that's a great point. It speaks to the importance of being mindful
Yeah,
of the diverse experiences and motivations that shape people's relationships with food.
totally.
What might seem like a simple act of frugality to one person could actually be deeply tied to past experiences of scarcity for another.
Absolutely. Now, moving beyond the kitchen,
Okay.
there's a whole other set of dead giveaways in this thread that speak to the social and emotional impacts of growing up poor. And this is where things get really thought-provoking.
This is where we see the hidden costs of poverty.
Yes.
The ones that go beyond just material deprivation.
Exactly. There's one comment that's particularly poignant about someone never showing their teeth
Wow.
when they smile because they couldn't afford dental care.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is, and it perfectly illustrates how poverty can have this ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Impacting not just our physical health,
Right.
but our self-esteem and social interactions.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that the consequences of financial hardship often extend far beyond just that immediate lack of resources.
Totally. And then there are the comments about not being able to afford travel or extracurricular activities, or that ingrained hesitation to ask for help even when it's desperately needed.
Right. These experiences can shape a person's worldview, their relationships, even their perception of what's possible in life.
Yeah, they create a sense of isolation
Yeah.
or limit opportunities that others might take for granted.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like an invisible barrier that can be hard to overcome even when someone achieves financial stability later in life.
Right.
Those ingrained patterns of thought and behavior often persist long after the material circumstances have changed.
Absolutely. It leads to this fascinating paradox that we see throughout this thread.
Okay.
While poverty can foster incredible resourcefulness and resilience, it can also leave lasting scars,
Yeah.
in the form of anxieties and insecurities that are
Man.
difficult to shake off.
It's like this constant tension between feeling proud of how much you've overcome and still grappling with those lingering fears
Exactly.
of scarcity, even when you're objectively doing well financially.
That's it. And that's a really important point.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, regardless of your background,
Totally.
we all carry echoes of our past experiences, both positive and negative. The key is to become aware of those influences and to understand how they might be shaping our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors in the present.
It's almost like this thread is a reminder that financial security isn't just about having a certain amount of money in the bank.
Right.
It's also about feeling safe and secure in your ability to meet your needs.
Yeah.
And to navigate the world without constantly worrying about scarcity.
And that sense of security can be incredibly elusive for someone who's grown up with poverty, even when they achieve financial success later in life.
Right.
It's about untangling those deeply ingrained patterns of thought and behavior, which often requires a lot of self-awareness and in some cases, professional support.
Well said. Now, before we dive deeper into this in part 2, we wanted to take a moment to encourage you to connect with us.
Yes.
We love hearing your thoughts, reflections on these deep dives.
Absolutely.
You can find us on Instagram, Twitter.
All the usual haunts.
All the usual haunts. And if you're enjoying these conversations, we would be so incredibly grateful if you would subscribe to the Voices of the Soul podcast.
Yes.
And tell a friend about the show.
Spread the word.
It helps us reach a wider audience and keep these important dialogues going.
Exact.
And speaking of expanding our reach, we're also on YouTube.
That's right.
Head over to the Shauna Palaj channel for even more thought-provoking content.
You got it.
You'll find videos that explore the intersection of personal growth, social justice, and mindful living.
We're sure you'll find something there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, folks, that's a wrap for part 1. Make sure you join us for part 2.
Yes.
Where we continue exploring these fascinating insights from the Reddit thread, "What's a dead giveaway you grew up poor?"
We'll be delving deeper into the long-term impacts of financial hardship.
Yes.
Coping mechanisms and how to foster greater understanding and empathy around these often invisible struggles.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
We're continuing to explore those dead giveaways of growing up poor.
Yeah.
And, something that really strikes me is the ingenuity.
Oh, yeah.
That emerges from these experiences.
Absolutely.
It's like people become masters of resourcefulness, finding ways to stretch every dollar and every item to its absolute limit.
It's about adapting to those constraints and coming up with creative solutions that most people wouldn't even consider.
Like, I was blown away by the number of people talking about repurposing things.
Right.
That most of us would just toss without a second thought.
It's a testament to a different kind of value system, right?
Totally.
Where waste is simply not an option.
Yeah. There are stories of washing and reusing plastic bags, turning old clothes into cleaning rags, even meticulously cutting open tubes of toothpaste.
Ugh, I've been there.
To get every last bit.
You got to do what you got to do.
Right. And these habits might seem unusual to some.
Yeah.
But they speak volumes about a mindset that prioritizes conservation and making the most of what you have.
Absolutely. It's not just about being frugal. It's about respecting the value of resources.
Yeah.
And finding ways to extend their lifespan.
And it's fascinating how these practices, which are often born out of necessity, align so well with modern-day sustainability efforts.
It's like a reminder that resourcefulness isn't just a product of scarcity.
Okay.
It's a valuable skill for anyone concerned about the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of creative solutions, one comment that really made me chuckle
was
about a mom who refilled a Mrs. Butterworth bottle
Oh, no.
with generic syrup
Oh, the classics.
to trick her kids.
Oh, that's good.
Right.
It's ingenuity in action.
Yeah.
It speaks to that desire to create a sense of normalcy and abundance.
Oh, totally.
Even when resources are limited.
It's like saying, we might not have the fancy brand name,
Right.
but we're still going to enjoy this treat.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many comments like that, right?
Yeah.
Stories of making meals stretch further.
Yeah. Transforming leftovers into new dishes, finding ways to make do with what's available.
It speaks to the resilience of the human spirit.
Yes.
The ability to find joy and satisfaction even in challenging circumstances.
Absolutely. It's about focusing on what you do have, rather than dwelling on what you lack.
Now, while this thread is full of inspiring examples of resourcefulness, it also delves into some of the more complex social and emotional challenges that can accompany growing up poor.
This is where we see the deeper impact of poverty, right? Like ways it can shape our self-perception and our interactions with the world.
There are comments about feeling ashamed or embarrassed about certain habits or possessions, like wearing hand-me-down clothes or having a limited wardrobe.
It highlights the social stigma, right?
Yeah.
That often surrounds poverty.
Right.
The judgments and assumptions people make based on socioeconomic status.
Totally. And there's this particularly poignant comment
about someone who never showed their teeth when smiling.
Wow.
Because they couldn't afford dental care.
It's a stark reminder that poverty can impact not just our material well-being, but our self-esteem and social interactions as well.
And these experiences can leave lasting scars.
Absolutely.
Even if someone achieves financial stability later in life.
The psychological impact of poverty can persist long after the material circumstances have changed.
Speaking of psychological scars, there are a lot of comments about anxieties and fears that stem from growing up poor, the constant worry about money, the fear of losing everything.
It's like a weight that never fully lifts, even when someone's financial situation improves.
There's this one comment that really resonated with me.
Okay.
It was about someone who said they still feel like they have to ask permission to buy themselves lunch, even though they're an adult with their own income.
It speaks to how deeply ingrained those patterns of scarcity thinking can be. Right.
It's like an internal voice whispering, what if you can't afford this?
Yes.
What if it's a waste of money?
And I think it's crucial to acknowledge that these anxieties are real and valid, and that unlearning those patterns takes time and effort.
It's about cultivating a sense of financial security, both internally and externally.
Now, while this thread touches on some sensitive topics, it's also infused with a sense of humor and shared understanding that's incredibly powerful.
It's like finding community and solidarity in those shared experiences.
Yeah.
A sense of, I get it. I've been there too.
And I think that's one of the most valuable aspects of this thread.
Yeah.
It's about humanizing the experience of poverty, recognizing the diversity of perspectives, and fostering empathy and understanding.
It's about seeing beyond stereotypes.
Totally.
And recognizing the resilience, the ingenuity, and the strength that can emerge from adversity.
You know, as we delve deeper into these conversations,
it's important to remember that poverty is not just a statistic.
Right.
It's a lived experience with real and lasting consequences.
And while there's no easy solution,
Right.
I think acknowledging those consequences and fostering greater understanding is a crucial first step.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to part 3 of this deep dive,
Okay.
we want to encourage you to join the conversation.
Yes.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on these topics.
Absolutely. You can find us on all the usual social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, be sure to subscribe to the Voices of the Soul podcast.
Yes.
So you don't miss out on future episodes.
And for even more thought-provoking content,
Yeah.
check out Shauna Pelage's YouTube channel,
You got it.
where you'll find videos exploring personal growth, social justice, and mindful living.
We think you'll find them insightful and inspiring.
Okay, folks, get ready for part 3, where we'll continue exploring this Reddit thread
Yeah.
and its insights into the complexities of growing up poor.
We'll be discussing the lasting impacts of financial hardship, coping mechanisms, and the importance of empathy and understanding in bridging the divides that often separate us.
Until then, keep those minds curious and those hearts open. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. As we wrap up our exploration of, what gives away you grew up poor,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how much bigger this conversation becomes than just those individual anecdotes.
It's like these personal stories open a window into broader societal issues, right?
Totally.
They force us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
It's easy to get caught up in those bootstrap narratives, you know? But this thread really highlights the systemic factors that contribute to poverty.
Yeah.
And make upward mobility a real struggle for so many people.
We see comments about growing up in areas with limited job opportunities or facing discrimination that created barriers to education and employment.
And there are some heartbreaking stories about unexpected medical bills. That just completely wiped out savings. Or having to choose between paying rent and putting food on the table.
Right. It's a stark reminder that poverty isn't always a result of personal choices or a lack of effort.
Right.
It's often this complex interplay of circumstances that can trap people in a cycle of hardship.
You know, one thing that really hit me hard
Okay.
was the sense of shame that so many people expressed about their experiences of poverty.
It speaks to the stigma
Yeah.
that surrounds this issue. Like it's something to be hidden or ashamed of.
Right.
Instead of a reality faced by millions.
There are comments about feeling judged.
Oh, yeah.
For using food stamps or for living in certain neighborhoods.
Right.
Like it somehow reflects a moral failing.
It underscores the need for greater empathy and understanding.
Totally.
We need to move beyond those simplistic narratives and recognize that poverty can touch anyone's life, given the right set of challenges.
You know, one comment that really stuck with me was about someone who didn't even realize they were poor growing up. Until they were an adult.
Interesting.
And started reflecting on their childhood.
It's a reminder that poverty can be relative.
Right.
And that even people who might have had certain advantages may not have had access to the same opportunities or resources as their more affluent peers.
Exactly. And it just reinforces the importance of having open and honest conversations about these issues. So we can break down the stigma and create a more inclusive and supportive society.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity.
Yes.
And working towards a world where everyone has a chance to thrive, regardless of their background.
So as we reach the end of this deep dive, what are some key takeaways that we can all carry with us?
I think it starts with challenging our own assumptions about poverty. And recognizing those systemic factors at play.
It's about cultivating empathy and understanding.
Absolutely.
For those who've lived these experiences. And recognizing the strength and resilience that can emerge from adversity.
And it's about using our voices and our actions to advocate for a more just and equitable world.
Yes.
Where poverty is not seen as a personal failing, but a shared responsibility to address.
You know, I think this deep dive has been such a powerful reminder that personal stories can illuminate larger societal issues and spark really important conversations.
And hopefully it's left us all with a deeper sense of awareness. And a renewed commitment to creating a world where everyone has that opportunity to reach their full potential.
Well said. And before we sign off, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of growing up poor.
We encourage you to continue exploring these topics. Keep challenging those assumptions and keep striving for a more just, compassionate world.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the Voices of the Soul podcast.
Yes.
And sharing it with your friends.
Spread the word.
It helps us reach a wider audience and keep these important dialogues going.
And for even more thought-provoking content, be sure to check out the Shauna Pelage YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
You'll find videos on personal growth, social justice, and mindful living that we think you'll find insightful and inspiring.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.